Hey there, boys and girls. Welcome to this week's episode of Halloweekly. Nick and George here with TV Terror.
Indeed, a new series from Halloweekly. So
We love series.
we do love
keeps us
series,
motivated.
and some series are like inspirations that come to us, and some are thrust upon us like by pandemics and whatnot, right? So
Yes.
no one's seeing a lot of new release movies in theaters for obvious reasons. And a lot of movie releases were pushed back, and we're doing what everyone else is doing. We're scrambling and finding old stuff and like whatever, not for the podcast, but just to watch, like in
general.
for enjoyment, right?
Yeah.
And I found myself watching more and more TV horror series, and I was like, why don't we do a series where we pick a theme and then find an episode from two different series that's like kind of on the same theme. This week's theme will be mistaken identity, and we'll just do it as a series and kind of like go back and find some old great TV. And there's some amazing stuff that I forgot even existed in terms of like whole series, let alone episodes.
So we have The Outer Limits.
Yes.
We have Amazing Stories.
Yes.
I was really interested in Amazing Stories, and I was like, ooh, I want to do a deep dive in it. There's nothing to deep dive in. It just came and went. Like, it was a hot flash of a show. I was like, maybe there's some cool behind the scenes or something like that. Fucking nothing.
There should be. I mean, the oral history of that would be fascinating. But you're right. I mean,
Well,
I looked
dude,
too, and there's not a lot.
It came back this year as a show.
That's what I'm hearing.
But I don't know if it's aired or not like that. I think they had they had Brian Fuller from Hannibal attached. So like
Right. Oh,
they could be like really great, but like
point.
I don't know if it's aired or not. Like I just kind of like.
So here's
glossed
my
through.
secret theory. My secret theory is that Steven Spielberg must have a grudge against Twilight Zone. I mean, he has to, because as I was telling you, when Amazing Stories came out, it was like the behemoth on the TV landscape for the weird TV show space. It was big budget. Steven Spielberg is attached. It was going to be huge names. And it came out at the same time as my beloved 80s reboot of Twilight Zone, which I thought was really underrated and had excellent episodes in it. And it was like a fight who was going to win, Amazing Stories or Twilight Zone. So then Amazing Stories disappears. No one remembers it exists except for me, and it's gone,
They
right?
had quite a few episodes for 2 seasons.
They did. Well, because they planned for it to be a big deal. And then, lo and behold, Jordan Peele launches a Twilight Zone reboot. And guess what's back? Amazing Stories. I feel like every time Twilight Zone tries to come back, Steven Spielberg is going to pop up and be like, wait for me. It's just so weird.
Amazing Stories. And well, I'll be honest, man. The two that we watched, I mean, we've watched Come to the Head of the Class multiple times in the group.
Yep.
Because it's really great.
Yep.
And we watched Mummy Daddy.
Mummy Dearest.
Mummy.
Right? Mummy Daddy?
Well, on the streaming service it said Mummy Daddy.
It might be. You're right. Totally.
I know. But it came up. I put in Mummy Dearest, and it came.
And it came up. Maybe I misremembered the whole name.
It popped right. Well, it worked. It got me to the free full episode on the NBC
Everyone
website.
misremembered the name.
Yeah.
Right.
Out of those 2 episodes, like, it's really got.
See that? Good. Yeah, and the fall off in quality is cool.
Well, it's crazy you said it, because as I was doing the research, like to see like what else it did, the titles of these and the stars they had in them was pretty crazy. Like there was like the first episode was called like Ghost Train, and then I was scrolling, and I saw in season 2 Danny DeVito's in an episode. I'm like, they weren't like not trying.
No, yeah, they were definitely
Stories.
trying. And even the Twilight Zone 80s reboot had episodes directed by Joe Dante, Wes Craven. There was one
William
episode,
Friedkin one.
Yeah, the William Friedkin. There was an episode starring Morgan Freeman and a few others. Like great. I mean, they were trying too. Like it's weird because there was a era where weirdness was allowed. It was sort of that era, and then Twin Peaks came along late 89, 90, and just like all of a sudden everything.
I got a handle on this.
Right, exactly. I'll show you weird, right?
You know what's funny? Since we love series, I have another idea for a series. I just want to pitch it to you.
Okay.
Freakin', where we have William Freakin' on, and we just talk about whatever he wants to talk about. Doesn't matter. His choice.
I'm open to it. As long as his head doesn't spin completely around while we're talking.
Well, if he does, I'll be like, that's freaking weird, and then we keep it into the
freaking weird.
We keep it into the thing. Amazing. Which one do you want to start off with first? For Mistaken Identity.
Let's start with Outer Limits. So we have 2 episodes that have mistaken identity themes, right? And then Outer Limits. So the background on Outer Limits is I love Outer Limits. I grew up with it. Love a lot of episodes. I didn't grow up with it, but I grew up with watching the reruns. I'm not quite that old, but you haven't seen even a single full one until this episode, right?
This is it.
So this is your introduction to Outer Limits. So tell me, as someone new to it, what do you think?
Well, I immediately got Twilight Zone vibes.
Right.
Like, it's hard not to.
Totally.
But I love that intro.
The intros are great.
Like, I love how they're like, we're taking control of your television. Like, like, we're gonna make it really loud or really soft. That was great. So I was like, oh shit, I think.
And think about how freaky that was. Because I don't know. I don't study science, but I have a hunch that show was pre-remote controls.
Oh, like the TVs that had a little, like that little.
Yeah,
board.
like, well, they didn't have any remote controls at all. Like, so I think they had to get out of their chairs and change
Crank
TV.
the dial.
Right. I think maybe remote controls were when that show came out. But think about if you didn't have the ability to change the TV from far away, how freaky it would be if someone was like, we've taken over your TV, and all of a sudden the picture gets fuzzy and blurry and like whatever. It would have had more impact to them.
I really wish more shows had that, like, kind of like cheese ball-y kind of effect, because no one really does it anymore. Well, no one even really watches title sequences anymore because you just hit skip intro. That's our next series, skip intro.
I pitch you a series. Skip intro.
Intro.
So that was the episode. Thanks
was
everybody. Download our next 45-second episode next week.
I will say this about Outer Limits.
Yes.
The music in it was like really, really good. Like there's things that I think it actually did better than Amazing Stories. I think the music, which is crazy because Danny Elfman and some other dude did the Amazing Stories one.
So yeah.
But this one just felt like
the music is special. So we've managed to talk all this time and not give them the episode we watched. So this episode is called The Architects of Fear. It's episode 3, season 1, right? And that's the mistaken identity part of it. And it's the plot of this one is basically Watchmen, right? I mean,
yeah,
right.
Like,
I mean,
kind of. They're like, we're
tangentially.
gonna, like, everyone's at arms with each other. What if we make this fake threat to come down to
Right.
unite us all?
Right.
Very Watchmen. No, it kind of made me hate Alan Moore a little bit because he's such a snotty douche, and
He can be.
I'm like, okay, but like, okay, you just added some blue people, like. The Watchmen, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I wonder if that would work with anything. Just add blue people. To
I know
it,
we'll
it gets
watch this.
better.
We'll pick another Outer Limits episode, be like V for Vendetta. And I'll be like, well, guess what, Alan Moore?
Guess what, Alan Moore? You fucked up again. So that's what this episode is. And one of the things that I thought was, I was wondering if you'd catch this because you're way more visual than I am, but it's one of the few times I remember back in the day when I was a kid watching stuff like this where I got that sci-fi vibe.
Yeah.
And it was shadowy and dark like a noir. Usually sci-fi is like really bright and think about Forbidden Planet. It's like neons and yellows and reds.
This gave me a lot of vibes from The Thing from Another Planet.
Totally, which we loved.
Dude, that was like the unsung hero that just like walked into my life one day. But it reminded me of that, of like the level of like science they were doing. Like it was real earnest in what they were doing, and they had to do it.
Well, earnest but twisted.
Yeah, yeah, it had that Cronenberg twang to it.
So the plot of this is they're gonna actually transform a person into an alien. Put him into a rocket, bring him back to Earth in front of the UN, and act like it's an alien invasion or an advanced ambassador or scout from an alien to spook the Earth into unifying against an outside enemy instead of fighting each other and nuking each other. It was, I mean, this is the height of the Cold War. This is like when they really thought they were going to wake up the next day to a nuclear wasteland every day. People were hiding under their desks at school for drills. Like that, you can see that there was a lot of terror dripping over like the episode of of a nuclear Armageddon, right? So that was kind of what was feeding into how they were handling the plot and whatnot. Because otherwise, you have to assume that level of terror, because otherwise their idea of surgically changing someone to an alien is insane.
And it came down to just like getting your name drawn.
Yeah, they just drew lots.
Dude, if I was sitting there,
all the scientists
if I was
sitting
sitting
around
there and they're like the guy unrolls the paper, he's like, Nick, I'm darting out the door. I'm like, not me, dude. No, sir.
Well, let me tell you something. If here's the thing, that couldn't have happened to me. Because they wrote their names on pieces of paper. I would have written Dr. Spock or whoever was across the way. Like, I would have written my own name on it.
Yeah, they didn't check it.
No,
they were just like, well, that's the name.
There's no chance my name would have. Well, actually, we all probably would have done that. They would have written my name.
Everyone's just crisscrossing.
Damn it, yeah. It all would have been the same. Oh,
that's why my plans fail proof. I'm out the door, dude. You're not catching me. But they had an alien like with them in the.
They did. Well, we'll get to that in a second. I just want to point out how heartbreakingly sad the beginning of this show is now, right?
Yeah.
Because there's this voiceover. Or it's either voiceover or it's the first scientist we meet who's giving like the theory of the case for why they should be doing this, and the voice says, any day now. There was another nuclear miss. We could destroy ourselves any day. We need an outside threat. If we have an outside threat, like a bacterial invasion, we'll all unify. Or a nuclear attack or an alien, we'll all unify and get together and work together and like whatever. And like, we're sitting here in the middle of COVID-19 with the proof in front of us that does not unify people anymore, right? So it's just super sad that used to be the case, and probably would have worked then. Let's be honest, because like America did unify basically World War II post Pearl Harbor, right? So like it was just so sad when they said they were giving the what we need is an outside threat like UFO or this or like global pandemic, and we'll just all get together, unify automatically. I'm like, oh man,
we won't. they if you would go back in time and you're like, listen, we have the pandemic, and they're like, is everyone okay? Yeah, all you gotta do is wear a mask. So like that's easy. Everyone should do it. You're like, it's not. Listen, people,
sorry.
There's this thing called Orange County.
Apparently, exactly. Apparently, it's harder than surgically turning into an alien. It's just wearing a fucking mask. So right, yeah.
They really take off running by turning the dude into an alien.
They do take off running,
and
that transformation is pretty cool.
So this is interesting because we're comparing it to Amazing Stories, and I think there's one scene in particular that really stood out.
Okay,
that I think challenges. I'll say this: I think the Amazing Stories probably won me over more all over, but I think this one scene actually probably rivaled my thought of.
Okay,
and it was when he had the hallucinations.
Yes.
How terrifying was that episode, dude? Or that scene?
Yes, terrifying.
Because I was watching it, and I was sort of getting some work done, and then that scene came up, and like I laser focused in on it,
right?
And then I started to feel myself feel like uncomfortable with it, and I'm like, the outer limits is making me feel weird from a scene that's super well executed.
This made me feel weird, and the part that made me feel weird was. So he narrates. Remember, they got him, and they're teaching him how to talk in the box once he's transformed into the alien. And his silhouette looks really cool in like behind the hospital sheet or whatever they got.
Yeah.
And they're talking to him about what he went through, and they go, "What are the feelings like?" And he's like, "It's all scrambled." And then, so here's the thing, right? This has a very Cronenberg's The Fly feel to me. So. Yes. That movie still gets to me this day. Of all horror movies, that's one of the like handful that can just like that, and The Exorcist can still rattle me to this day. Mm-hmm. Exorcist 3, right? And this had that, and even though the effects are way worse than obviously Cronenberg's Fly, and the plot's cheesier, in most respects than Cronenberg's Fly. Although I'd argue some of the acting's on par with what happens in Cronenberg's Fly, because these are great actors in this episode, especially the actress who plays the wife, and then Robert Culp, the main guy who turns into the alien. I thought they were spectacular. But anyway, the point is, in The Fly, one of the scenes that gets everybody is when he's in front of his bathroom cabinet, and he's collecting all the stuff that's falling off of him and putting his teeth fall out and like whatever. And in this one, they go, how are the feelings? He goes, it's all scrambled. I'm having these weird feelings. I've got a toothache in my arm. And I'm like, Ew, Jesus Christ. Like,
Disgusting.
it was just narrated, but there's something about that offness. It's the same thing that happens with, like, Channel Zero when you have the guy made out all teeth.
Right.
When things are in places they shouldn't be, it freaks me out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like that feeling. And he started narrating. He's like, I've got a headache in my neck. I'm like, oh, God. Like, stop talking. Like, it was still creepy.
The uneasiness really settled in some of the sound design. Like, when they were doing the first testing, they were putting him in that chamber to get used to the altitudes. There's this like buzzing noise that's going on throughout the whole thing.
Yep.
Kind of like David Lynch kind of thing.
Yep.
And then he's like, I'm gonna turn it up 7 more atmospheres, and then the buzzing gets even like higher cranked. I just felt like really uneasy.
Totally.
During their whole experiment things, and the science fiction part of it, I could eat that shit up.
Yep.
Like, it's cheesy, but like I buy it.
Yep, totally.
I'm curious to see how he's gonna survive.
And I'm curious because one of the interesting things about this episode, and a lot of Outer Limits, to be honest, is they dispensed with a lot of really crucial details or backstory stuff that leave you massively hanging, but for some reason, the whole story feels complete. This feels like a science fiction Edgar Allan Poe tale. Like it's a loop, start to finish. Like it's a moral lesson, but it feels real, and the people in it feel real. Just like, you know, so it's got sort of like that magic touch. But like here's an example. First of all, where did the little alien come from?
Why didn't they just put that in the spaceship, just crash landed?
Well, they couldn't control the little alien, and second of all, he wasn't going to frighten mankind.
He was a little guy.
And so whatever, so that wasn't going to work. And he didn't look like the creature they made. I mean, which I'm going to get to that in a second. But like, so the question is, where did this guy come from? So here, I'll just give you like alternate theories. This is not. I'm just making stuff up to show you how open the show left it. One, mankind visited that planet and brought him back secretly, like the military, like a NASA situation, right? Two, it visited here and we captured it, right? But they know its name. They know it's from Theta, right? Which was weird because did Scientology get this from like
L. Ron Hubbard,
watching Outer Limits along with Alan Moore, and then right? So that's possible, right? And the other weird thing is, did they take a chimp, like a experiment, and create into an alien first, small version, like a scientist would, to do it to a human, and there is no alien, like they're making the whole thing up.
Right.
I mean, that's how open the show left it, is you just don't know. And that's super unusual to leave something that wide open in terms of plot, right?
Yeah, like they just like pulled on an alien. I was like, we got an alien.
We got an alien. It's got a name.
Right.
It's from Planet Theta. Where the hell's that? We don't.
This is
They're
great.
not going to tell us. We don't know.
On to the experiment.
Okay, mystery number 2. Robert Culp, his wife thinks she can't have children. It's part of why they're so despairing, and Robert Culp is resigned to do the, it's the Spock thing. When the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, you got to sacrifice yourself. So he's like, I'm going to die doing this alien thing, probably, but I'm going to turn into a ridiculously weird alien.
Go out on a high note.
Right, and I'm right, which is going to make my relationship with my wife kind of difficult, even if I survive, right?
Right.
So like he knows that this is a bad thing for his life, but he's like, I'll do it to save humanity, like noble sacrifice, right? He would wear a mask. So he's off on this mission to go do this thing, but part of what's reconciled to him to it in a weird 50s gross misogynistic whatever way you want to call it is that they're not going to have children. So like his life's sort of over anyway. And so he's like, I'm just going to like whatever. But then it turns out his wife can have children. So they start doing the experiment, the change on him. They start doing the transformation on him. And then he gets his wife pregnant. So question, is the child...
You're going to have that Cronenberg birth.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And we don't know that either. But it's like this terrifying possibility just left open, which I love. Because it would have been wrapped up and pointed to. And if we made this now, like, how it would have been. Like, it would have been the way Life ended. That movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, like, whatever. Where they like, exactly what's going to happen there, right? Like, they show you, Calvin's going to get unleashed on the world, eat the planet, and like, So I love that they left it all open. Did you feel like that stuff was left open, or were you just like hooked into the plot?
I was just hooked into the plot. I didn't really get... The only thing that bugged me is that, like, he was like, I will do this thing. I will land in the capital and tell them that there's many and more will come. And he's like, I'm laying in the woods. I'm gonna lay in the woods near the base and point at my wife, and then go to alien heaven.
Well, here's the thing. Let me defend a couple things in this episode, and I'm biased because I love the episode, but so these may be wrong, but they may be right.
Okay.
And if you love the episode too,
I know I love the episode.
Maybe right, but the listeners, if you love the episode too, maybe these defenses will help you with some of the stuff that's cheesy in the episode. So one thing I thought of, which was interesting to me, was that they screwed up the alien transformation. So it's like a Frankenstein situation, right? Mm-hmm. So like it doesn't look like the first alien. No, so they either had no intention of making the first alien or they botched it. And if they botched it, then that explains why he looks so ridiculous and half finished, because they're bad scientists, which I believe because they suck at science for most of it.
You know what? The doctor did not have a lot of skin in the game. Well, I mean, he did because he loved his friend, but he was like hesitant on everything. He was like, well, I guess we gotta turn you into an alien, Frank. Gonna crash in front of kind of the government people.
So I think the fact that he looks like a rough draft of an alien might be on purpose, and that might be genius. So that's the like costume design defense.
That was his big thing. They were like, whenever the camera's on him, just give us one of these.
Just give us one, whatever that is. Well, wait, I'm going to tell you who was in that suit in a second. It's going to blow your mind. And then the second thing is like, so I like that he was sort of like an unfinished version of that, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also weird to me that when you have him at the end getting. So when he's flying, like you said, on the mission to go to the UN, he deviates course and lands in the field. But because, remember, this guy is so scrambled now. He's got headaches in his foot.
Yeah, he's got a head in his foot.
He's got toothaches in his elbow, right? Yeah. So, like, he was like, fuck these guys. I'm going to go see my wife. Punch it. And went to the wrong place because he's all scrambled. Like, his left is right, his up is down. Like, he can't steer the ship. He got close. So he did pretty good because he's a smart guy, or was a smart guy. Now he's a smart one. Peyton. Right. But anyway, I think he missed the destination because he can't do anything right anymore. Right. That's my. I mean, when he was trying to communicate with his wife at the end, he could barely accomplish any kind of sane motion at all. I think he was just disintegrating like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly on top of being wounded. So I think they botched the transformation. And I think that explains a lot of what we're seeing in the episode and makes it very Frankenstein-y and more interesting to me. Because, Frankenstein did not come out the way Frankenstein's monster did not come out the way Dr. Frankenstein wanted Frankenstein's monster to come out. Let's be real. And I think we're dealing with that situation here, too.
Just imagine he's, like, flying that spaceship. And he's like, my wife thinks I'm dead. She knows I'm not dead. But I better see what I look like before I go out. Like, just ingrain that into your memory, dude. How rude.
Well, and I mean, the scientists, here's where the thing, they're so, and this is probably true of a lot of scientists, they're so brilliant at what they do or what they know how to do or what they've studied, but they're so clueless about like human behavior because this guy was already going rogue. I mean, he had already gone rogue halfway through the episode and tried to kill him, let the alien free. He was doing all kinds of random shit. And they're like, okay, now go fly to the UN and execute this complicated plan perfectly. What?
I know. He was like, he's like, did I hurt anyone? They're like, no, but fuck, shut up.
Could have, right?
Yeah, and then but they justified it by saying they made some sort of like chemical thing for him. They're like, we have some hormone in there that'll straighten you out. No.
Nope. No. Well, you've been wrong all the way up to now, so you're probably just gonna continue.
Yeah, I mean, well, the doctor looked like he was second and third guessing himself the entire episode. He was like, well, I'm just gonna put this mask on you and crank these levers and hope you don't turn into a piece of dang toast.
Which is unlikely. There's an amazing shot of his wife coming down the hall where her shadow gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's like she's developing a belly to like 9-month size. And it's just, I mean, there were just such cool attention to detail stuff in here that I thought was spectacular.
This definitely makes me want to check out more Outer Limits.
There's way more better episodes of Outer Limits than there are of Amazing Stories. So that's a valid thing. There's this one thing I just wanted to tell you about because I thought you would dig this. There's a stuntman inside the fully transformed alien, right? And this stuntman's name is Janos Prohask. Anyway, Johan. And so what this guy what happened was this guy wanted to audition for the part. He was like the Doug Jones of the time. He was super like coordinated, could move weird, like whatever. So for his audition, everyone came in an audition and they came in and did the Frankenstein walk and like whatever. And the director was like, maybe. And then I'm just looking for a guy to be in the suit, but like, let's see how creepy you can move. And everyone would come in and do creepy, like whatever. This guy came in, said, "Hi, I'm Janos." And the director's, "Hi." And he goes, "What can you do?" And he flipped himself into a handstand in front of the director, took a beer bottle off the director's desk, put it down, put his finger in it, and balanced himself with one finger in a beer bottle in a full handstand. And director said hired. So, like, just that's how he auditioned for the part of the alien. So
Did
I think
they cut it from the episode?
I think they underused his moving talents because the alien doesn't get to do a lot.
Imagine like you audition for it and then like you watch the episode air and all he does is creep behind some walls. And you're like, but I could have fucking done that.
I could have done that myself, right? And Byron Haskin directed this episode. He actually did a couple other Outer Limits, but he directed the classic War of the Worlds, and he was the director of one of the earliest live-action Disney features, Treasure Island. So these were good, talented people working on
Jesus
turning
Christ.
out this stuff. But I love his War of the Worlds, and I didn't even put two and two together that he was the one who did this episode until we got ready for this podcast. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. This dude lived in 1984. He was 85 years old. He died in Montecito, California.
So he didn't get to see this amazing stories.
He
He
missed.
He couldn't hang on for a couple more years.
Too bad, Byron. Well, maybe he's not really dead. Maybe they changed him into
to an alien, and then he crashed. Where would he crash? What would be the?
Maybe they changed him into a mummy because that's where we're headed next.
And they did change. Well, technically, he could be a mummy right now.
Damn.
You know what I'm saying?
Cut that out of the episode of Grimm.
He's just chilling with some worms and dirt. You know?
That's very, very possible.
Poor guy. Okay, so amazing stories.
Outer Limits amazing. Oh God. George.
Outer Limits amazing.
Outer Limits was amazing. Now Amazing
Outer.
Stories, is pretty outer. Talk to me about this episode because this is more in your line than mine because it's comedic, and comedy horror's a tough genre for me. But
this blew my mind because you had wanted me to watch this episode for a little while now, and I was like, all right, I'll get around to it, and then I'm never gonna get around to it, right?
Just like Jaws 2.
Just like Jaws 2. I had to be harassed.
Yep, you had to be cajoled, blackmailed,
everything for like a year and a half before I watched it, and then I watched it, and they're like, great, Jaws 3.
Nope.
Sorry, I'll take another couple of years of baloney. But like you sold it to me by saying it's like the Monster Squad, but like down the street.
Monster Squad with adults.
Monster Squad with adults.
Yep.
And it's like pretty goddamn close to that. Like it has that same vibe, that same fun feeling.
It has that monster tropes in a blender feel.
Yeah, dude. It's like I don't know why it was reminding me of like this McDonald's Halloween horror tape that had like all the monsters in it. Because like,
I can see that
because it had that fun, cheesy Halloween monster movie vibe to it. But it's called Mummy Daddy or Mummy Dearest.
Mummy Daddy, probably.
Mummy Daddy,
because that's a line in the episode. Remember?
Yeah, the Mummy's a Daddy. The Mummy's a Daddy.
So that must be the name.
I think that's it. And it's about a guy filming a mummy horror film, and where they're filming it is cursed because a carnival or freak show had been there 100 years ago or something like that, and they had a mummy that you could see for a nickel
in the American South because it's touring, right?
Yeah.
Wherever this is,
they were definitely in the South. They had a draw
yes.
to accent.
Yeah, and they had those creepy trees that you see in Savannah with like the willow. Yeah,
those always look really cool.
Yes, they do.
But the mummy allegedly is still in the lands. Ra Amen Ka, which that's a really cool name.
It is very cool.
I really like that. Anyways, the guy playing the mummy, he's in full like Doug Jones garb. Because that's what I thought about Doug Jones when that episode came out. I was like, I wonder if he had to deal move around like that.
Right.
He has a kid. And he has to go see his wife in the hospital. It's just a couple miles down the road.
Yeah, his wife goes into labor while he's filming this episode.
During their lunch break.
Yep.
during their lunch break, and he's like, "Oh, that's an hour." He thinks he has enough time to go see his kid, come back, finish the movie, and then that's when everything goes super wrong.
That's when hijinks ensue.
This is a great episode.
So yes, here's the thing. So there are flaws in this episode. I like the Outer Limits episode better, but this is definitely the second best Amazing Stories episode, and I love parts of this episode so hard, right? Because I go back so far with this, but it's I don't know what to do with you as a horror fan if you don't once in your life want to see a mummy driving a motorcycle with a sidecar, or a mummy through a cemetery, or a mummy on full on horseback, like Sleepy Hollow, Headless Horseman style, galloping through a swamp. Like I mean,
a mummy running, a guy dressed up as a mummy running into an actual mummy,
right? Or a mummy attempting to do mummy martial arts moves against another mummy.
He was gonna try to fight that mummy.
He was Brad Pitt, Bruce Lee, full on. Like he was like moving his arms and doing like he was. I mean, these visuals are so insane, and all these years of watching horror, I've just never seen these combinations. It's like someone took all the stickers off a Rubik's Cube and just put on random symbols, and just shuffled it around. Like there are situations that a mummy should never be in, and just for those insane cracked visuals alone, I love the episode. But then it's the whole universe and atmosphere, because it's got that Monster Squad swampy Universal, not quite Universal monster vibe. The effects are great. The makeup's great. All that stuff is really, really cool.
The mummy
cool,
outfit
right?
the guy's in the whole time looks really, really cool.
It was funny when we were watching it together, and you were like, the Hollywood mummy looks better than the actual mummy.
Yeah, the actual
Ra Amin-Ka, the actual Ra Amin-Ka.
He looked like he was in a Goosebumps episode. But the one from the film was actually kind of frightening looking.
Right. Which is ironic, because it means that Hollywood makes better looking mummies than the ancient Egyptians did, which makes sense, but it's still kind of...
it's kind of crusty.
Right, which is still kind of hilarious. So it's got Bronson Pinchot playing the director of the movie, so he's doing hilarious Bronson Pinchot things. What else stood out to you from this episode?
Well, I like the fact that he just ends up kind of living his character, which is weird, because you think as an actor, if he wasn't super dumb, he would kind of be able to connect the dots.
Right.
But then again, he also just had a kid, so he's rushing to get to his wife. No, just it felt like Monster Squad vibes with Tucker and Dale comedy.
That's so right.
Because it's just a comedy of errors the whole time.
Yep, and it gets a little meta. Which Tucker and Dale does, too.
Well, yeah, because the village... So the show opens with the villagers chasing this mummy into a swamp, and they're about ready to shoot it, and then they all cut, and then he goes to see his wife, and then that's when the shits are...
And the odyssey of him going to see his wife is where his car breaks down, and then people try to hunt him down. He ends up at a gas station. He's trying to gas up his car, and the people working at the gas station think they're being attacked by a
he's
mummy.
watching the mummy.
He's watching a mummy movie, which... So it's totally like the Halloween, Jamie Lee's watching something watching the thing while horror breaks out, right?
My favorite thing with this episode is the actor trying to communicate with the townsfolk who are just completely frightened of him, but all his entire body language is mummy-esque. He's kind of reaching out for him.
And he is a savage. I never watched this episode with closed captions before. He is saying stuff under his breath about these people, he's in danger of his life. They are pulling a full-on Frankenstein monster with torches mob together to come hunt him down, and which is also a hilarious scene, because there's the townspeople trying to figure out what to do about this mummy on the loose, and then it cuts to Quint. I mean, it's basically Quint. You got a character there who tells them the story about how Ra Amin-Ka, and that is just his delivery of that story alone. I could just watch over and over.
My favorite thing about that scene is that they're in this town center, building or something like that, and he's randomly in a rocking chair in the middle of the place. So he just got that visual of him rocking and telling the story of Ra.
He brought his rocking chair with him from home to be.
He had one of my favorite lines. He was like, "We used to live somewhere that had a curse, and we moved out of there." And it worked.
And it worked. But so they're deciding what to do, and then they go out, and then they're not particularly good at hunting a mummy down. There's this hilarious moment where they're trying to figure out how to kill a mummy,
And it's
which
that
as
dude-
a horror fan,
It's the dude from I think it was what's his name, Knotts in Batman.
yeah, you're right, the henchman,
The henchman.
the head henchman who gets shot.
Yeah, he's like, give me a gun. He gives him like Joker get the gun. He shoots him right there.
Totally. Jack Nicholson puts him down, right?
It's that guy. But the setup of it is really funny because it's two guys talking here. The main kind of doofus guy who wants to lead the charge, and then the dude from Alien, who is sort of skeptical. He doesn't want to go out and get in danger. And then in the middle of this is our guy from the gas station who saw him as a mummy. And they're like, what are we gonna do? We'll get fire. And then the guy in the background, as he's leaving, turns around. No. That's Frankenstein.
And then they're like, silver bullets.
And then he turns back around. That's a werewolf. We'll drive a stake through his heart. That's Dracula. Like just the comedic timing of
It's
that.
amazing.
It's just boom, boom, boom.
It's amazing. And they're running through all these horror tropes. And then you realize, as a horror fan, that you don't know how to kill a mummy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you kill a mummy? What? Like, I to this minute, I don't know exactly. Apparently, to them, they do something that would never pass muster filming this episode now to them. But the idea of how do you do it? Like, I think just shooting him was what they were going to end
The
up
Monster
with.
Squad, you just unravel them.
Right. Well, that
works.
but that's not going to work because we know
no.
that's not going to work because of how this episode ends. But anyway, so like, so it's weird because they're having this discussion, and then you realize there is no set way to kill a mummy, so that's kind of unique. But they have this guy like in threat of his life, and that's where he's a savage. Like they've caught him and they're prisoner, and he under his breath. He's like, you're a bunch of hillbillies.
A bunch of rednecks.
He's a bunch of idiots. Like, and he's like, but I never caught it when I first watched the episode because I didn't have closed caption on at the time. But under closed caption, this guy is about to get killed, and he's
just
throwing
ripping
heat. Yeah,
I love him.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a shit.
No.
But what's great, so you get like the meta call outs of like how do you defeat everything, and you're already making a mummy movie that's super atmospheric. The guy's watching a mummy film. It's just horror, and then they hit you with some more Frankenstein.
Yep.
Or is it Bride of Frankenstein?
Bride of Frankenstein.
Bride of Frankenstein with the blind guy.
Yep.
And it's just so out of nowhere because and it actually this one had two good jump scares in it that I thought were actually pretty effective. Like they scared me at the time.
Okay.
One when he goes to his little shack,
Right.
or whatever it
Right.
is, and it has that weird like ramen ka snake.
Yes, that was cool.
That was pretty scary. But it just smacks you with Bride of Frankenstein out of nowhere. You're like, okay, he's with this guy, and then you realize he's blind and he's feeling him, and you're like, oh my god, I know what scene this is. I know what we're doing here.
They just went straight into horror cliches. They were like, we're gonna lean into this.
Yeah, just boom, 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 horror cliches, and then that's when you see Ra Amen Ka.
Yep.
For the first time.
And that was a pretty effective reveal.
I thought it was pretty good.
What's the other good jump scare?
The other good jump scare was when so the actor sees Ra Amen Ka, and he's like, oh shit, and then he takes off running through the woods, and then it's when he eventually ends up at the I think it's when he gets to the cemetery or when he sees the hospital out on the horizon.
Okay.
The mummy theoretically should have been like a couple hundred yards away. Like
Right,
he had
right,
space,
right.
and then the camera pans and the mummy's right behind him. Like
Right.
it was a cheap jump scare,
Right.
but like it was kind of funny.
But it's still effective.
Because this mummy, you don't even know why the mummy's attacking him.
Right,
Like he just opened up the dude's sarcophagus, and he's like, "Well, I guess I'm just like."
No, dude, the funniest moment, and because there's really funny dialogue, whatever, but the absolute funniest moment in this whole show, and one of the funniest moments in all of 80s horror TV, is when Ra Amen Ka gets his flashlight.
Oh yeah.
And then he's like telling the people, no, Ra Amen Ka is behind you. And behind you, the mummies, there's this beam of light in the air as he staggers around, like no idea where he is. And you're just watching this mummy with a useless flashlight, like just everywhere. And it's the most obvious. He might as well be one of those things they put in front of car dealerships that inflates and like one of those guys. And they don't see him. Like they're just focused on the actor mummy and not the real Ra Amen Ka. But him in the background, just like with his flashlight, is the funniest visual.
I mean, seriously, like if you love classic monsters, there's no chance you don't like this episode.
Right.
Like
Right.
the other episode, for the Outer Limits one, like maybe like some people probably won't get into it, some people will.
Sure.
But like
Depending on how tolerant you are of how effects aging not that well.
Right.
Right.
But this one, the effects all
Yeah, it's fine.
were great. There's only one like effect that looked kind of cheesy. It was when he crashed his car. You could tell like they sped up the thing, but like that doesn't matter. Like
No.
it's still like that was nothing.
Well, and that was the point of Amazing Stories, was the budget was so high that it shouldn't have aged too badly, which it didn't.
Yeah, and like
it
that
didn't.
was it. And I was like, oh, they did a thing there, but it doesn't matter because like the mummy looks great, and then we're back on this guy, and you followed the mummy the whole time.
Right.
How often do you get to follow?
Never.
You know, the
Never.
the,
Even when
the
you're watching,
monster.
right? When you're watching, like it's like it would be like spending all of Jaws with Bruce.
Yeah, but like you're with the mummy, and it's like it's always interesting. And like you watch it with subtitles.
Yes.
Because if I couldn't imagine if I had watched this when it aired and like I would like
Not have subtitles,
Yeah, not
right.
have subtitles on. Like I don't know what I would have
Right.
done because there's so much stuff that he says that would have went.
It helps you get to know him, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the ending. Spoilers for the ending, because the ending is spectacular. I love how it's filmed. I love how it's executed. But one of the cool things about it, so we were watching it together. You'd never seen the episode before. And it's weird because when I show people who are younger who never saw stuff like older things, you wonder if it's going to have any impact at all. Because there's a lot of times where I've shown people older stuff, and when it's over, they're like, that's good, I enjoyed it or whatever, but it had no real time impact because it's so aged.
Yeah.
That it's just not going to work anymore. Like there's so many old comedy movies, like not Airplane, because that's still funny, but like that style where all the inside jokes are topical.
Yeah.
And it just like it'd be like watching a Daily Show from like the early 90s.
Right.
Like,
Or for like
no reaction.
I'm sure if like the kids on TikTok, if they watched a scary movie.
Exactly.
Like,
That's
huh?
the perfect way to put it. So, you know, we were watching this together, and when it cut back and you realized that the real mummy had ended up on the set and that they were going to start incorporating him into the movie, you were like, I forget how you said it, but you were like, "Oh shit!" Like, and it was so cool to watch something old still be able to have an impact, like with a plot twist.
Because as soon as Ra Amakha gets to the set, the director's like, "Oh, there you are, great, right on time. We can get these last few shots in, and here we're gonna go. Keep that same energy up, and then
good energy,
good energy."
Because the other guy is pretty nice as a mummy on the set. Like he's a nice guy in general, right? So when Ra Amakha shows up, he's like, "Arr!" and the guy's like, "Good energy."
That's what it is. Keep it going. Keep it going. And then they wrap it like Ra Amakha came back from all these years and got himself a film credit.
Yep. Yeah. And then they wrapping it is interesting choice of words because it ends with the director coming over, popping a cigar in Ra Amakhan's mouth, which, by the way, is what you do when you have a baby. So I thought that was a really cool little touch at the end because they were doing it because they rapped, but like he just had a child over here, the other mummy, right? And then he pops a cigar in his mouth, and then he goes, all right, you're done. Finally, we can get you. Let me get out of these wraps. And he starts unwrapping them, and the camera just goes to Ra Amakha's insane eyes. And he is so ready to be revealed in his zombie glory and just go apeshit on everything. And it was, I mean, it's just such a good way to end it. Like
even the payoff of the wife having the baby. And
that scene was great.
Him getting into the hospital and him checking into the rooms, and you hear and he shuts the door. Then he opens up another door, and they throw a bedpan at him, and he's like, "What the fuck? Ew!"
That's so good.
I love that. And then the line from for the title episode, the villagers. The timing of it.
I love you're calling them the villagers.
Well,
that's what they are.
They are the villagers.
Totally,
they got their torches and their shotguns and shit like that. But as the officer's walking him out to the big mob, the wife comes through, and she knows who it is immediately because it's obviously
right.
But she goes,
he's been coming home in semi-makeup for weeks now, or coming to visit at the hospital. That was the setup, is he was going to go visit in the hospital and like whatever, right? Like I think the hospital's used to seeing him that way for the most part. The patients aren't.
Yeah. Well, the he's sitting in the hospital, and a doctor and a nurse walk by, and he has his notes, and he goes, "Someone get him some new gauze." And they pay like no attention to it. He's like, "Where's my wife? Where's my wife?"
It's amazing.
But but just the line coming from our gas station guy.
Yeah.
When the villagers see the wife and him holding the baby, he goes, "The mummy's a daddy." Like
so good.
It still holds up.
It was so cheesy, but it was so good, and it was such an awe moment, and that's kind of like the sweetness of it.
Right.
You just don't get that in horror very often in a way that works. Either horror tries to be really, really sentimental, or it's edgy emotional like a Babadook would be. So you're getting emotion, but it's not sweet, right? Like it's so even when horror tries to do it, like there's this running theme in the 2013 Evil Dead remake where the Jane Levy, I think, is playing a junkie. I think and people are trying to support her and help her out of it. And she comes out of that movie like so empowered. That movie ends with basically her walking into a sunset, except for the sunset's blood. But like it should be sweet, like she's gotten over her addiction, like whatever. But it doesn't feel like sweet. Like this feels sentimental, which is cool.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love this. Like I just like. It sucks that there's not an abundance of these types of shows.
There might be new ones that are good. Well, you never know. It'll last as long as Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone lasts. That's what we know for sure.
Yeah, as long as that's going.
Yeah, Amazing Stories will not go anywhere.
I don't know if Steven Spielberg's producing it though.
They got
Brian Fuller. They got Brian Fuller.
Probably not. He's probably not producing.
Brian Fuller's really good though.
He's the original creator of it, so his ghost is hanging around. Pushing it forward.
He's the raw Amin Ka.
He's the raw Amin Ka of Amazing
of this.
Stories. Yes.
So which one? So you liked Outer Limits one?
I mean,
end of the day?
Again, I don't like comedy. Horror is not. It's not my sweet spot. So like I like things that are like I've found the Outer Limits episode still genuinely disturbing in parts and in its concepts, right? Which is weird.
I did too, dude. Like I found myself getting like. It's weird, kind of grossed out a little. I don't know why.
Because it shouldn't, because the effects, we've seen so much more extreme stuff than this.
Yeah, but like I still felt like a kind of like a little uneasy because I was like,
that's what I love.
Yeah,
yeah. But it's kind of comparing apples and oranges. Now the mistake to close this out, they're both mistaken identity things, which is our theme, right? And you know, when I was trying to think of other mistaken identity because it happens all the time. You have like the trope where you send someone out and the people who are outside gun them down thinking that it's you sent out like in a mask like the villain, but it's actually a hostage or something like whatever. You have like these horror tropes of mistaken identity, like the different ways they play out. And I thought the way these played out was really cool because it didn't lean too heavy on that for the meaning of what they were doing. Like the mistaken identity part is a powerful thing, but it was like the right dash of something in a recipe instead of like this is all what it's about, right? Which I thought was cool.
Right. So like for Amazing Stories, it was just like it wasn't like the well, I guess it kind of was a main driver, but it wasn't like I kept thinking of Face Off. I kept thinking of Face Off, which then led me to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's not that it was the driver of the main story, but it was cool that you could tell in both cases, in both these episodes, you could tell that the people making it, their interest was elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right? Their interest, like anyone else would have been like, this is the hook, we're going to stick to it, we're going to play out the hook. And they would have just gone with and driven it like into your face. That's the problem I have with a lot of modern horror where I felt like that was, ironically, Gene Levy, that I felt like that was happening in Don't Breathe. I felt like that movie had one message and it was heading straight through that message, thriller style, all the way through it. Whereas these were juggling kind of different, like mistaken identity and relationships with secrets and like, you know, all kinds. And the other one was just, we're going to have a fun horror scramble and like throw horror in a blender. And next thing you know, you're going to see like crazy visuals you don't see in horror usually, which was cool.
The only other mistaken identity film that I can think of note, Freaky Friday. You remember that?
I don't, but I know the concept. But I was trying to think of it in horror, and that was, you know, you have mistaken identity in like the Bride of Frankenstein blind person scene. Like you have things like that, but they're just little touches. When it's the theme of something, that's usually what they do with it.
Yeah,
right? It's like imagine Christopher Nolan when he does like identity things like whatever. That's the theme of the whole damn
time.
Thing, right?
Dude loves time.
Dude loves time, right? Maybe Christopher Nolan's not Christopher Nolan. Maybe it's Steven Spielberg, mistaken identity style. We have it all solved. Well,
then if he does, he needs to make more Amazing Stories because Tenet's never coming out.
No,
that movie's not coming out in theaters. I've seen that shit for a while.
That movie is doomed. There's going to be another James Bond sequel after No Time to Die. We still won't have seen Tenet.
I forgot that was supposed to already come out.
That makes me so sad.
That makes me
sad. I was so excited about that movie. That
sucks.
Sucks.
Okay, well, don't mistake your identity. Don't hold on.
I see your segue. You're gonna do this.
Don't mistake this as a 1 trillion 5-star review show. Don't make that mistake.
We're only a 5-star show.
Only a 5-star show with like 30 reviews. So make it like 35.
Yeah.
And make that your identity.
Nice.
And you can solidify you put your name, address,
Social Security number.
Social Security, blood type,
credit card
with in the review,
code.
so that your identity will not be mistaken.
And never thefted. That'll work out really well.
Please don't do that.
And also, we are looking for we have a couple episodes lined up after this that we've already thought through, but we are looking for other combinations of 2 episodes from different series. Doesn't matter the time. Could be super old compared to super new, like whatever. And the theme. So hit us with a theme, but also hit us with some of your favorite lesser known horror TV series that you are a fan of, because we're looking for episodes to highlight, and we're never gonna get through all the series that there were.
There's so many.
And it's gonna be like I know just even going back just from a cursory, like Boris Karloff's Thriller and Friday the 13th, the series, which was not Friday the 13th, and all these like things like I'm like, oh my God, there's all these series that I forgot that had really, really quality stuff in them. So hit us with the ones you really like that you want us to include in the series.
I mean, if we hadn't done this episode, I probably would have never watched Mummy Daddy.
No, and you probably would have never watched Outer Limits.
No, and like both of those were knockouts. Also, the cool thing is with the Amazing Stories one, if you're watching this, I found it you can watch it for free on NBC's website. So there's no excuse not to watch it. You'll get a shit ton of ads.
Do you want to warn them?
Yeah,
I was going to say.
Yes, you're going to get like 30,000 ads.
I think the scientists who did the botched alien transformation in the Outer Limits episode are the people who created NBC's app.
Yeah, and they're probably in charge of Peacock, which is going to be fucking terrible,
shit.
Dude. But
Sorry.
you can at
Sorry,
least
NBC.
it's at least readily available to watch.
Yes.
And it's a great episode. So
Yes.
there's no excuse not to watch it. It's
And actually
$4.99.
watch Head of the Class, the other Amazing Stories episode.
Yeah, they should have that up there.
Starring
So
Christopher Lloyd. That is a
that one-
masterpiece.
that one is
That
like-
that is
if
a
you watch those two
flat-out masterpiece.
Watch those two back to back. You'll have at least an hour and a half of a good time.
Yep, totally.
With minus the ads. Actually, you'll have
4 hours of a good
4 hours of time taken up. Hour and a half of that will be of shows. The rest of the time will be of advertisements.
But it's fine.
No.
Multitask.
All right. Well, until next time, stay scary. Watch a bunch of horror TV shows.
Yes.
And horror movies. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.